Okay, I think we're live. So welcome to the 8th edition, I believe now, of the Data Value Show. Today, there's no value in the title, but there's value in this episode, the evolution of BI and analytics. And I've got Ryan Dooley that I'm happy to have on the show today. I'll add him now. Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
Chris, doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. So I think I'll probably start a little bit about how we first met. I think we met at Day-to-Day Texas. So I think it's another one of these situations where I met someone in person, and then been following and kept in touch via LinkedIn and digitally after then. So I think that topic we talked about the evolution of the modern data stack. So I think today's one is probably a slice of that. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and the show you do with your brother?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Ryan Dolley. I've done a lot of roles in kind of analytics and business intelligence over the years. I started maybe 13 years ago as a Cognos developer and did that for a while, and then kind of branched out into other tool sets. I've done consulting, and currently I'm the vice president of product strategy at Good Data, so a BI vendor.
Yep.
And then, as you mentioned, my show. So every Thursday at noon, I do a show with my brother Eric called the Super Data Brothers Show. And Eric is also in business intelligence, so he's the BI team lead at Michigan State University. And we are real brothers, by the way. Everybody always asks, like, sometimes I think they think it's like a marketing gimmick, but like, we're actual brothers, right? And actually, our dad started at Cognos in 1994, so we're kind of second generation BI practitioners.
Well, I'm trying to think. I was probably there before your dad. That makes me feel a bit old now, but it's safe to say it's in your blood. Business intelligence and reporting, so second generation. I mean, you touched on Cognos, and I think that's something that I just touched on there. That's where I started my career in the early 90s. So I think it must be 91 or 92. But
oh wow.
But we'll come on to that in a minute, because I think that's probably a good place to start, because I think that's where the birth of BI actually began. So we've got a few topics we'll cover today, and I think it's all a bit of a journey that we're on with it. And I don't normally have presentations on there, but I'm going to stick something up, and we can talk through what you feel the difference were at each of those eras. So this is a slide, one of the slides I took from the presentation I did at Day-to-Day Texas. Which are you back there next year in January?
Yeah, actually, I will be, and I don't know if we've publicly announced it yet, but Lynn and I are working on putting together a little analytics track at Day-to-Day Texas. And so I will be there, Eric will be there, and hopefully this analytics track is starting to come together. So
fantastic.
It's a great conference. Micro plug for that. I mean, it's awesome.
Definitely. I mean, and Lynn, if you're listening, and great work you do on that. I've ended up being a late addition and presented there last year, and I must have did something right, because he asked me to come back again this year. I think this year will be I'll probably doing something with Matt on my other favorite topic at the moment, which is business value, which it's taking a lot of my thought process in that at the moment. But so let's just look through. And I think there's a new era, and I think this is probably the point to say where we've come from now, and we can talk about what we think that new era is. But I broke it down to three: the data warehouse era, the big data era, and the modern data stack era. Yeah. And the BI tools obviously followed that. So how have you seen tools change during these different eras, or maybe even within those eras?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, because the evolution of the tools, especially over, I would say, the big data platform era and the modern data stack era, has largely been in the direction of enabling what the vendors call self-service. Is it really self-service? Maybe to some degree, if you're just operating off a spreadsheet and you're using Power BI on a desktop or something like that. Maybe you could truly call that self-service, but it's always required actually a great deal of data infrastructure to enable anything, right? But if we think about kind of the data warehouse era, this is when my career started. We were maybe at the beginning of the transition into the big data era, and that was really, we were focused on building these big reporting platforms using big reporting tools that had a ton of capabilities built into them. Like you think about Cognos, right? You had an OLAP engine, you had a semantic layer, you built standard reports and burst reports that you could send 10,000 personalized PDFs out every Monday morning, right? And the way the tools evolved was, and really credit to Tableau, I think, for making this happen, is in the direction of more, putting the tool set in the hands of data analysts,
Yep.
letting them get closer to the business and build out more visual presentations. The dashboard really took off in kind of this era as the standard presentation format. And so really the tooling, I think, evolved in the direction of like, how do we enable that as quickly as possible, right? Like how can I make this analyst as efficient as possible at building out dashboards for my executives, right? Is kind of just the base direction of evolution as far as BI was concerned. And what we're really seeing now, I feel anyways, is almost the renaissance of some of those things from the data warehouse era. Like I mentioned, the semantic layer. I know we're going to talk about the return of data modeling, and all of those things that were the standard of practice when my career started. That were less about speed and agility and more about like data quality and reproducibility, right? We kind of got away from that as far as BI is concerned, and I think what we're seeing now is a resurgence of those concepts, but of course in a modern way, not in necessarily the Cognos business objects way of doing things.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The thing that got lost over that time was that semantic layer, that model layer on top of it, and having that as your single route onto the actual underlying data. I definitely think that, as you were talking through that, something triggered in my mind is that the technology has driven us to achieving that goal, which is getting the data to the consumers in the quickest way that they like and want. And if I go back to that Cognos era, I know you had I can't remember, Chris Hine, I think the TM1 fanboy, himself. And I'd seen the precursor of TM1, which was Power Play back then. But what that was doing is people wanted information quickly, fast, and they wanted to slice and dice it. And they didn't want to have to give all the requirements to someone to go and create a prescriptive report. And they had that with the likes of Power Play, and it was just limited back then to the amount of memory, because it was in memory. Oh, sorry, it was built. It was built which limited the number of the memory you had on the machine to build it. Whereas TM1, it's the amount of memory to actually run the cube in situ. But and then obviously as the power of the underlying platforms became more having more efficiency, we started putting that down. I think then I thought we pulled back up with the likes of Click and Tableau to some degree, where you were able to bring data in and model it yourself and have that in a cache layer. And I think now we've gone back down to pushing it all back down to the modern data set. Are we back on that with edge computing and like DuckDB and things like that? Are we pushing it back up to the same approach again?
I mean, you mentioned DuckDB, and I think DuckDB you'll see as a major catalyst for exactly what you're describing. Like if you look at the vendors, if you look at what we're working on, certainly I'm not ready to announce anything today, but you'll see something along those lines. You look at Omni has integrated DuckDB, and so a lot of the forward-looking vendors are moving in that direction. And I think that one of the things that's driving that, obviously there's performance, right? Now that we have the ability to do these, the amount of memory that someone might have on a MacBook could be substantial, and the compute power on a MacBook could be substantial. And you think about, the user experience you mentioned that slicing and dicing experience we had in the power play days. Like that really does rely to a large extent, I think, to deliver something like that in a modern way, you need to have some local execution or processing involved, right? And so you look at DuckDB, which can do all this processing in the browser, I think is the important thing for those of you who don't know, is we're kind of talking about an in-browser, in-memory database that is what DuckDB enables. And so you look at that, and you look at the types of experiences that people want with this super fast slice and dice interface. And we are kind of seeing that with things moving in that direction. And the other thing that I think is driving it, Chris, is that the surprise snowflake bill in like year 2 or year 3, where you think, where it's 3 times what you expected. And a big part of that is, my BI tool is driving all this query traffic to my Snowflake environment. And so what if, from the BI tool's perspective, I really believe in giving people optionality. Yeah. Do I want to drive the queries to Snowflake, or do I want to pull data out, pre-process it, and store it on the BI server? Some tools are built on a paradigm of one versus the other, and I think the way we need to go is like both, right? Yeah. And even on a per use case or even per metric basis. This metric I'm storing in memory or I'm computing on the edge. This metric I'm always going back to Snowflake. And oh, by the way, I can stitch them together using the semantic layer, right? That is kind of the dream in my mind.
Yeah, and I think that it is, and we have this data oasis that we're looking at rather than the data mirage that we have at the moment. I think, and in that perfect world, that mirage, I referred to something the other day was having a map to the quality of data, and that was I was talking about that when I was referring to training LLMs. The LLMs are going to be the most most performant based on the best data they get. So rather than it just being companies having a data marketplace, there should be a credit, a quality assurance of those ones, and people directing you to where the best ones are, best quality data is for that scenario. I think the same thing internally with your company as well. If you had a well-modeled semantic layer linked to a nice catalog, linked to owners of it that owned the quality of it, that pushed it all back and were incentivized to ensure that quality was correct, I think you're right. You could map out each of the use cases that the data is used for and work out the speed in which you need to actually refresh that data, where it's best for that data to sit. I think in terms of data has gravity, pushing it, maybe it makes sense now, this many queries. What we're going to do, we're going to move that from the edge to a local place because everyone needs it. And I think we're a long way off getting to that. But if we did have that map, you're right. You could get your best bang for your buck. Snowflake and a lot of the other companies, originally, quite rightly so, extra consumption normally related to extra value.
Yeah.
But I think now that's not. It's not. It's not the case anymore for many reasons, I think. But interesting. There's a lot of talk about Snowflake bills at the moment, and
yes,
some interesting ones on there. And anyone that hasn't seen it, Instacart, I think, had to declare their Snowflake consumption because of I think Frank Slootman's got some holding in it. So it became public knowledge of how much money they were spending, and everyone's trying to work out how you can generate that much and how much value you get from it. And
right.
That's another topic for another day, maybe.
Yeah, but I think to your point, like you mentioned LLMs, and one of the things that I'm it's just kind of the data oasis you're talking about. One of the historic challenges that I see with building it is just it takes a lot of effort and commitment. And I wonder if LLMs, if you see this, like, are they going to help be the catalyst towards generating that commitment and effort? Because they're going to require what you're talking about, I think. Like the chatbot, it needs semantics, it needs good data, and it also can't be a situation, I think, where you ask it a question and wait 7 minutes to get your answer, right? And so I'm kind of hoping that that will be the catalyst for some investments in data quality and data performance at firms that historically have been resistant to making those investments.
I definitely, I mean, that's something I've said recently and thought exactly that. And there's not many hype cycles I think we've had in this industry which have had a good positive impact on where the board invests, where the board puts money in for data projects. And I think this is the first time where you can very quickly correlate the quality of the data to the results you get. It's not a situation where we've had to wait for this data mart to be created for the finance team to tell you that information is rubbish. You know, they can, here you go, here's your data. Right, go. Here's how you've catalogued it and documented it. This is the result you get from that. And they go, oh my God. I think we need to catalogue our data a bit better. And I think some industries, especially I think the legal industry, has had nothing to disrupt them for this for this period of time. And from what we've seen when we've engaged with some of these, they're very behind the curve, because there was no need for them to do great marketing campaigns or to optimize their single customer view on things or to share information across the partners because they get paid to go and reference it. Whereas now, if someone can do that as efficient or nearly as efficient and cost a lot less in doing it and produce the quality that's as good as a standard practitioner in their industry, the costs are going to come down and they're going to have that competitive advantage. Which I think is the next thing that companies need to focus on is what's the value in having competitive advantage, and reporting tools give that. I think that's what's coming next is interesting. The edge stuff definitely, computer reporting on more local memory and local storage, but security comes into that though. So that's always when it becomes in larger companies they start saying, oh no, we can't start having this data going across everywhere. So there are probably some products and tools that will start innovating in that area. I think that's the missing piece of the puzzle to unlock that next year, I believe.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the legal profession because that, in my experience, I've scoped out, I don't know, in my consulting days, like many hundreds of BI projects, right? And because that was my role for a long time, was kind of the project architect when I was at PM Square, and we did have some legal customers, and they were by far, I felt like I was scoping projects from 10 years ago, because there was no pressure to get it right.
Yeah.
To your point, and that's really changing. And as far as the security is concerned, I mean, that's really one area where large firms are so cautious, and I'm seeing this with LLMs right now, rightfully so. I mean, it's kind of the way of things, right? They have the most to lose, and so you kind of expect that out of them. But it's been interesting to see, like a good data with the LLM tooling we're building and in our customer base, the customers who are can't get enough and just want us to move faster and faster versus the customers who say, this is all very interesting, but it's going to be 2 years for us to even get approval to use any of these features. And so, thank you for sharing your roadmap, but this isn't motivating to us yet. And that there's a big bifurcation going on right now in terms of customers, companies' ability to I think take on the AI piece. Now, I would imagine we'll have to see, does AI really deliver on the value promise? And if it does, I think that reluctance will go away very quickly. It will have to, because you'll have no choice. It will be embrace this technology or get left behind.
Yeah, I think any CDOs listening or people that have got the purse strings, you don't go all in on this. And I think what you look for is you look for an easy opportunity that comes arise that's minimal risk, and then do that part of a larger exercise. But don't wait until the end. Don't think I'm going to get all of this stuff done before I even start it.
Oh yeah.
I think I had Scott Taylor on a couple of weeks ago, and he's talking about how you sell your data project. And yeah, you have to have some good news every now and then. And if that's a release of some new insight, a new data model, a new data mart, or a new self-service capability, provide it regular and often.
Mm,
Take him on the journey, because doing it all at the end is not going to be not going to get you not going to get you keep you in that tenure for much longer. So you'll have to leave another job somewhere else. We've got a
yeah.
question here from from Ian. Ian's obviously a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons as well, so I think he was asking for some tips uh, of how we do that. But and I know this is, I suppose you can think of how you would put in the term data products
Yeah.
into the world of a consumer rather than a vendor.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I will start by saying I'm a big believer in data products, and I actually started. My story with data products started maybe in 2016, where I suddenly found myself. I was working at a consultancy, but we started up this kind of skunkworks little software dev team to build some Cognos extension products, build some product apps, right? And I didn't know anything about leading a software development team. And so I read the Lean Product Playbook. And as I was reading it, I kept thinking to myself, all these concepts apply to your BI practice. Like, why aren't we thinking about this in terms of analytics in general? And so I'd never heard the term data product. I didn't use it back then, but I built this presentation I gave at an IBM conference in 2016 that was about product thinking and how to bring product thinking to your
Yep.
BI team, right? And so I'm a huge believer in this. And we've had a couple guests on the Super Data Brothers show to talk about this, like Shantona Tully, great episode. If you want to check our archives and you're interested in data products, Ian, she's kind of blew my mind with her thinking on it. But so all that is to say, I think the biggest thing, if you're looking at data product thinking and how to bring it into your organization, it is a shift in thinking. It kind of depends on what your data team or your BI team is like. If you have a very, I find the BI teams and data teams that I talk to who are at, kind of in the tech industry or tech adjacent or startups, they make this transition pretty easily because the whole organization is already thinking in terms of product market fit and that sort of thing. Whereas if you go to, I live in the Detroit area, we make things, and those organizations, those BI teams are operating in a much more service model. Where they're fielding tickets, and that's what they're used to. And so getting them to convert to product thinking is a lot harder. The analogy when I talk to data teams about it, I always encourage them to stop thinking of themselves as a service org and start thinking of themselves as someone who needs to provide something that someone would buy. Even if that's not the case, you need to have that mindset, and you need to be looking for product market fit and understanding, thinking holistically, thinking about your data team as something that is not creating reports or data marts or tables or data sets, but something that's offering a user experience.
Exactly.
And that includes, how do people get in touch with you? How do you deal with them, right? Like, what is the process? It's a lot of stuff that happens outside of your data and outside of your tooling. And that is what will give you product market fit with your users.
I think the job titles we give people doesn't help with that sometimes, because you're the BI developer. Okay,
Yeah.
you're the data engineer, or you're the DevOps person. And I think you just use a term there, which is team. And if we start thinking of that team, that team is delivering that end epic, that end thing. That epic should be at that level. And I think I've heard some posts about a data product needs to have a SKU, a product has a SKU, and that's because I think it's used to. There's no clear definition of what it is. Now, I know there's some work going on in John Cook, if he's listening, is part of a forum in as well, which is all about the definition of a data product. But I think it's that mindset is the first step in that right direction. Is you are building something that's delivering some business value to the end consumer, and it's understanding what it's packaged up as. It's not always easy to directly relate it to every activity performed, but the end goal is what you should be focusing on.
Yeah.
We got I've got another slide I'm going to add to this as well, and that might well. Yeah, I think this is another one that we presented up there. I'm not sure it's on full screen here anyway. Yeah, okay. So I'm not sure if everyone's blocking out the bit on the left actually, but it's really just starting. It's starting back when I think the modern data stack era came about. But I think there's an interesting correlation to what data products have come out, or also reporting tools. We can go through the ones that are on there. To how the data's been structured for them to work in the way they want to work. And I think Looker's the first, well, Chartio probably, which I'm not familiar with that one as much, but I mean that was back in 2010. I think Looker's the first one that I think was the first modern data stack product that was actually a proper SaaS tool. I think out there. It took a lot of probably the features that the Cognos suite had of Cognos 10 and onwards, or I think actually ReportNet, I think was the first one 7, but then Cognos 8 and onwards. But it was never a SaaS product. So Looker was the first one, and I liked how they did that metadata modeling, but that seemed to get lost a little bit after Looker created that. We hadn't seen anyone else having that same modeling semantic layer, and I think till ThoughtSpot. I'm sure you may have some other things planned, or what you're doing at Good Data as well.
Yeah.
But why do you think that that semantic layer got lost during that period?
Yeah.
I lost you a minute, Ryan. I think we lost Ryan for a minute. Oh, he's come back. Let's have a enter stream. We've got 2 Ryans. I'll remove the other one.
Yeah. All right. Am I back?
You're back. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So good question. Looker is a very interesting tool to me because I almost feel it's like a bridge tool between the Cognos business object era and kind of the more agile, what Gartner calls mode 2, strictly focused on speed of insight delivery era. But your question, why did the semantic layer get lost? And I think it comes down to the kind of the shift in the perception of value that Tableau was able to drive, which was, how quickly can I put together a really good looking dashboard to meet some use case, right? And so, if you look at kind of the Tableau feature set, they've since built out more of a semantic model, but for the longest time, a Tableau dashboard was driven by kind of a single data set. You couldn't do any in-system joins or anything like that. And so I feel like there was kind of that change in the perception of what drove value. Mm-hmm. And then there was also the emergence with the cloud tooling of the ability to really quickly go from the realization that you needed a piece of data to its materialization in a cloud database. And that was just such a novel thing compared to the era when, you had an Exadata box running in the basement and getting a single new table provisioned on that box took 6 weeks, right? Yep. And so that was just such a revelation. Like those two things together, I could build this data pipeline and get a purpose-built data set made very quickly without having to deal with an infrastructure team. I could just do it myself as a data engineer, and now I can create a very beautiful dashboard on top of it very quickly. Those two things combined made it seem like the semantic layer was like this old school, heavy, very labor intensive way of doing things. And to a degree it is, like, let's be fair, right? It does take effort. You do need to work and put some planning into it to build up a good semantic layer. And that drove a lot of value. It really did. Like, it was just such a breath of fresh air. And as someone who was working on Cognos teams and watching them get undercut by people who could churn out a great looking dashboard in Tableau or Power BI in a week, whereas the Cognos team had to modify the semantic layer and
Do
Cognos
it
wasn't
properly.
yeah. I mean, it's just like that's really what drove it, right?
Yeah,
I
it
think
was. It was.
what's changed in the last few years is this kind of been this recognition of like, well, now I've got these 750 tables in Snowflake that all have some version of the column revenue, right? And they were all purpose built to feed a single dashboard or maybe provide a data extract to someone. And now the question becomes, which revenue is the right revenue?
Yeah.
And nobody knows.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point you raise there. Is that flexibility that we provided without putting the guardrails has got us to where we are now. Is the fact that we've had that creation of so many reporting different dashboards across multiple tools that now we've got a situation where you probably need a product to go and sit across and be a central point to show you where they are. Yeah. Or in fact, there's a shout out for Workstream.io. There's someone already doing that now. So I was chatting to them the other day. But yeah, that's we keep creating the need for other products in the marketplace because we've cut corners. I think. I think observability products is another example of that. We've had to put things in place because we didn't put the right quality checks in. We bought too many pieces of the modern data stack that needed something to stitch it all together. Now we need something to monitor all the individual pieces. So I think it's really good that there is that view of, right, now we need to get an understanding of how we're capturing and where that data is, and having a semantic layer that can give context to the data, and then context that can be used by large language models or generative AI that means that we can get to that stage where we don't have to have as many dashboards or say dashboards are dead, or how many different reporting panes to look at. I suppose that leads on to a nice thing, topic about UIs. I did one of my I did a post testing the temperature of the market with a bit of a tongue-in-cheek post of that. The UI is dead, and everything's just going to have a prompt box. I don't think that'll be. You won't get to that extreme, but I think halfway house is probably where we'll get. So, what's your view of what the future of reporting and BI tools would look like, as opposed to they are now?
Yeah, I think I mean, this is in my mind one of the most interesting areas of advancement in research in BI is we've kind of talked about the two most interesting things. The first one is the semantic layer and the return of the semantic layer, and now the UI and where's it going to go. So I think you mentioned dashboards are dead. That's a perpetually edgy, popular thing to say, and I think it is half true to your point. Dashboards became like the lingua franca of data communication, and I think that really they fit a very specific use case very well, which is we've got agreed upon, we know what questions we're trying to answer, we know what metrics will answer those questions, and we've agreed on how to consume them, and we know we need to monitor them over time. If you can check all four of those boxes, a dashboard is what you should build and probably will be the way to monitor these known questions with known answers for the foreseeable future, right? But they've been used for everything. Like every question that comes into your data team, the three things people tend to do that I see are, we'll copy paste the visual into Slack or Teams, or we'll build a dashboard, or maybe we'll copy paste some visuals into a PowerPoint deck, right? Those are kind of the three consumption models that I see a lot nowadays. And I do think that where things are headed will be much more of a conversational interface. Like I can tell you, we're thinking at Good Data about take dashboard filters and like the infinite variety of drill through and drill up and down and filter features that you might want to build into a UI. And how many of those features could we just replace or never build to begin with by having a prompt? Just a prompt that says, you know what, can I see this? Can I see this slice of the data? But could you please only apply it to this one chart, not all the charts? And then there's a year's worth of UX research and dev time that I don't have to do anymore as a product executive, right? And so
That's a really, really good point, actually, as well. Is that there's so much stuff that is copy paste and like automation, or someone, I'll write a script for that. They write the script, they find some edge cases. To give that simple, and the more we have metadata that's behind these products that is accessible, you can actually manipulate it via a prompt box. I think that's going to get better use of our time, and people shouldn't be worried about that. And I think when you're doing a product feature, you should look, okay, well, how many people are actually going to do that? What's the audience that will do that? And would it be better if it could just be scripted via a command line interface? Because if it's not your regular user that's doing it, it's your administrator. They're going to be happy doing that because they feel that they can still code. They can write in a prompt box.
100%. And I'll tell you, I mean, that's definitely, if you look at kind of where we're at Good Data, where we're headed, I mean, that's a big area of investment for us, is exactly what you just mentioned, right? Like giving the tooling for more administrators or analytics engineers, to kind of giving them some AI-based developer acceleration tools, right? To let them scale better. And then I think that's, I mean, I'm just looking at the comments here. There's a lot of people. Dashboards are not, like, they're not going away. Let me be clear, right? They're not going away, but we're starting to move into the yes and era of dashboards, right? I have a dashboard, but I also maybe have these other experiences, or maybe I see embedding, moving both the visualizations and maybe the semantic layer, the semantic driven AI chatbot, moving it out of the BI interface and more into the places where people work, right? Still tied to the BI interface, still driven by your BI interface. But, instead of asking someone to have two monitors, one with HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever, and then the other one with your BI tool, and be going like this, right?
Yeah.
Moving more of the BI experience into the place where people actually work, which I think will lead to a decrease in dashboard utilization, because instead of having 5 metrics in a single screen, we'll decompose those 5 metrics and move them into the operational system screens where they best live,
Yeah, and just as you're saying that, I've seen some products now, especially if you're on Chrome or something, they have a Chrome plugin, and I think it's that context-based reporting. And wherever you're going, if you're able to go across, as you say, your different systems internally, and if you're all doing it via Chrome and that has some context, that, okay, I know I'm on this, hit that up, I'm going to get the report for that company at that time. It knows what I'd want to see when I'm on that page based on the context of that page. I think there's terms of monetization, and I think it's called verified wrapping. So that's like you're wrapping that product around everyone, other products you're using, to make that journey much easier for the consumer of the product to go and get its information. I think the other thing that popped into my mind was about the dashboards is dead. And I did a comment on this, as it's like saying newspapers are dead. And I think there's a hybrid, I think, as you said there, is that, it's good to have that newspaper, but if you go in there as your first dashboard, which is your front page, the rest of the paper would change depending on, what you've looked at on that front page. And, again, it's understanding what data people want to consume and understanding the context around it with some good metadata. You can drive that consumption of the data by whatever mechanism afterwards. It doesn't have to be a dashboard. Then it could be an answer to a question. That's come into your mind because of the information you've actually seen. I'm looking at our main topics that we're meant to cover here, and I suppose the one at the end, which is the future trends, we'll touch on that for a little bit more. So real-time analytics versus standard or batch-based. Yeah. I did a post. I think it was I was traveling with JetBlue. Great experience, JetBlue. If anyone's listening.
Oh yeah.
And it was how often they gave me updates and pushing out real-time information. Where the benefit of that, if anyone hasn't read the post, it was basically every 3 minutes I was getting an update, and the time difference was literally 1 or 2 minutes either way. So they could have saved all the money on that push app notifications. Oh, my battery power, my time, I wouldn't have been as annoyed that it keeps changing every 2 minutes, and there was no value in it. So I think you touched on it earlier about having dashboards that understand maybe it's defining a dashboard at the time, what business use case it's being used for, and then that being used to then trickle down as requirements to say this is how often I need the information. So do you see that BI tools becoming more of the console that's driving activities further down the engineering stack?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's the position they're going to move into, and I think it is kind of the return of the old idea, from the Cognos era, except now what I think the winners are going to be the BI tools that best support exactly what you're talking about, right? It's that the purpose of the BI tool is shifting away from being the visualization generation interface, although that will still be an important capability. But really, what it's going to be about, I think, is driving metrics to the places where they are best consumed. And I think a lot of that shift is going to happen due to the acceleration, the new user experiences that AI is going to give us, right? Like the purpose of the BI tool can't be that I'm going to have an army of data analysts manually churning out dashboards, right? That's just not going to cut it anymore. But what the BI tool can offer is more bedrock metric reporting distributed to wherever you need, wherever those bedrock metrics need to be, right? And so it's the traditional BI interface. It's embedding visualizations or metrics in custom applications. It's providing the semantic layer to your data scientists via SDKs and APIs so that they can do their thing on top of it. It's all of that stuff, right? That is where I predict the value of BI is going to be going forward, right? And those are the tools that I would be looking to invest in right now. And when it comes to real time or batch, I loved your post about that, right? Because that is the perfect example. Sometimes you see this notion in the data world of like real time would always be better. Why would I ever want to wait, right? If I can get the real time stream. And it's just an example of in data as in life, there are some things you don't need to know every minute detail about, right?
Yeah.
It's actually deleterious to your ability to manage your business if you know every transaction as it happens. If you
too much,
you
noise.
don't need to know that.
No. Yeah, in fact, if it's a sales alarm that each time you hit a target, you don't want to hear it's got at 1p, or sorry, 1 cent. Yeah, so of course,
right.
Happy Labor Day, everyone, as well. I forget. So thank you to the US listening and on holiday today and still tuning in. I just pulled up Alex Chung's one, which I think is quite cool, is it? When do we expect that Minority Report style dashboard? I don't think it's that far away. I think if we're saying, having a nice touchscreen monitor, which has got some edge computing on top of it, which is then going and fetching the required data you need. I use this analogy, which is I quite like, and it was one of the conferences at Matt Turk's conference, one of his data ones, when he had everyone talk about language LLMs, and the guy was talking about if you from Matrix. So if you take it up Kung Fu, you'd learned Kung Fu, but also you primed your knowledge with all of the surrounding information that's near you, how hard the bench is, the distance between the wall and yourself, or the surface area on. You could be the best at Kung Fu, and then but under that you can ask the next question. I want the best hand-to-hand combat, or the best specialist activities. So I think in the same way as if you're able to have pockets of that knowledge that are accessible, near real time, that have all been pre-packaged up, and it'll be maybe it's not too far away. Maybe in our lifetime still. There's another cool question as well. I'm bring this up. What's the biggest piece missing to move into the 2020 year of BI?
That's a good question. I mean, I really think I do think the defining, to my mind, the defining characteristic of the 2020s era of BI will be the kind of that semantic driven metrics experience, right? And the ability to support lots of downstream uses outside of the BI interface. Embedding, data science, custom application development, LLMs are probably the major ones, right? That you're going to want to support. And then as a team, so there's the tooling, right? That's what the tooling needs. And if I were, an executive looking to revamp my BI practice, maybe I'm tired of Tableau. I hear that bubbling up a lot lately. Maybe people are not happy following the Salesforce acquisition, and I'm looking at bringing in new tooling. That would actually be the main thing I would be looking at, is bringing on those types of capabilities. And then as far as your team is concerned, right? It will also be a shift for the BI team, more towards, I think, data product thinking, embracing some degree of data mesh, data fabric way of viewing things, and starting to think less about providing a report library and more about supporting a number of distinct downstream uses, and how data product thinking can help you do that.
Yeah, definitely. It probably leads very much onto Ian's question on the same one. Where do BI tools fit in that modern data stack? So with the recent ThoughtSpot and Mode
Yeah.
acquisition, I mean, two very, very different products, very different end users, and I don't think it's the overlap between the client base is very, very small. These were
Right.
these were targeted at different people, but is that the beginning of that workbench being given at that Jupyter notebook style area that combines reporting and also data science?
I do think that, actually. I think that we're moving out of an era of point solutions in BI, and we're moving into an era of more BI consolidation and kind of bigger BI platform capabilities driven. Again, I'm going to just keep coming back to it, the semantic layer, right? More than anything. And the fact that the value moving away from that kind of rapid visualization creation experience and more into the platform capabilities that you can offer, that a semantic layer can give you, like just the bigger vision, the bigger suite of capabilities, I think is, the 2010s in my mind were really defined by taking the Cognos or business objects experience and breaking it into its parts and saying, what if I created a startup that just did this piece of what Cognos did and did it really well,
Yep.
And I think the pendulum swings in tech, and we are swinging back towards more of the kind of the platform capabilities. And that mode, if you think in terms of the 2010s ethos of decomposing the platform into its individual pieces, that acquisition didn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
But if we are moving into the era of platform capabilities and being able to offer lots of experiences in a single tool, suddenly you look at modes, analyst focused, exploratory kind of SQL notebook style interface, and it does become something someone like ThoughtSpot might want to broaden their appeal and have a bigger, more complete platform.
Okay. So I think the thing I think is missing that is getting there with some of the products I'm seeing now is it's that data ops of the BI world, and even ThoughtSpot were late to the game on this, and again, go back, Looker had this nailed at the beginning.
Yes.
And everyone else hadn't got to that stage. The rise of DBT, well, the rise, maybe the fall of DBT, but recent price increases. But is that metadata driven, code based checking it out? That didn't exist in that BI world for quite a while. Or the teams were in a separate team, so it was always you do release, we build on top of yours. So unfortunately, still created that waterfall sort of approach to delivering the end data product. And if people start thinking that, I refer to it as all ops in the past. You start having that all ops way of thinking, where you are looking at all the metadata that's required and having everyone working collectively into the beginning of that pipeline to the end of that pipeline to how it's consumed. That's the problem. Otherwise, you're just pieces of the puzzle. Someone's making a cog, someone's making another sprocket. You need to make the engine together. And
this is like I could not more emphatically agree.
Yeah.
And this is actually, you know, I've been at Good Data about 6 months. You're describing the reason I joined Good Data actually is because they built out this capability. So like everything in Good Data is as code, and the whole idea that we go out and talk to people about is like, why is BI walled off from the rest of your data ops practice, right? It needs to be an end. Your data product needs to be code that starts with acquiring the data from your source systems and ends with the creation of your semantic layer and presentation objects, right? All of that needs to be an end-to-end single pipeline, and that is, I think, especially if you start to think about, okay, LLMs are, you know, like language is in the name, code is language, right? The AI acceleration of this end-to-end data pipeline for tools that can embrace this as code way of working, I think is going to be one of the key differentiators of this era of BI.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I don't think it's that far away from being achievable. We've gradually got the data engineering and the source systems they're working on, with data contracts being that ability for them both to work together each other. I think it's the same thing again. It's just the other end. You're moving another contract, which is your semantic layer, your metadata, or your catalog layer, or what it's referred to, universe in business objects. You've all had the different terms for them, but it is, it's just a semantic layer that's describing the data underneath it, which I think leads me on to another like little topic or thought on this, is business rules. So there's always, I've seen it in the past of where they should be applied, and I think there's a pragmatic approach to it of depending on which ones are departmental and which ones aren't, but collectively they all need to be seen somewhere. So would you say that the semantic layer is the best place for your business rules to be defined?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's where it makes the most sense. Now, what I would recommend people do is kind of, you have a graduated application of business rules, right? Because one of the mistakes we made, we've been kind of, I think, talking up the Cognos BO business objects layer or era here, and it was very cool. One of the problems with that era that led to, the what you might call I kind of call the Tableau era, but that 2010s era of BI was our insistence on pushing everything through that semantic layer and into that single source of truth data warehouse. And so I think that's where the business rules make the most sense. But what I would do is have kind of a graduated process of getting things there, right? Where there's, you need to allow degrees of freedom and what I might even call play, right? In your domains, your business units, your business teams, whatever you want to call them in your data practice. And then from there, things move into the semantic layer when their association with business value is proven and clear, right? And then it's like, this business rule, or when it's clear that it would benefit more than just that one area. You want to have your business rules for finance that only pertain to finance. Okay, let's leave them there. But once it's clear that we need this logic or these rules more broadly, we move them into the semantic layer.
Yeah, I think, I'm just thinking out loud a little bit, machine readable business rules is what we want, isn't it? Really is.
Yes.
Okay, write it out, do what you want, but then let's convert it into at least some consistency of how it can be understood.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really matter where it goes. You've got your business rule catalog that's hopefully linked to your data catalog in this perfect data oasis that we're heading towards. And then it could push it to the right place, or it could go, you're able to move it, where it is. And I think that's the other problem is, it's hard. I've been here before. Architecture patterns for defining these things, and then you have to come up with a definition of when it gets done in the database, when it gets done in the semantic layer, when you allow people to do these in the report itself, it's and again, it's the speed to do these things as well, because people go with the path of least resistance, and they won't bother documenting it because they go, oh, I can just put it in the report. I mean, we'll miss the sprint otherwise, and you'll build up technical debt until someone comes and goes, what's this pile of rubbish? I've just spent X amount of money over the years on this stuff. It's all been signed off on my sprints, and I've got a crock of rubbish. Yeah, so I think some of the approaches we have for delivery has created bad habits, I think. But yeah, the balance in that perfect world is how do you achieve that? I think that's the thing we're all trying to solve.
Yeah, and I think the key to kind of the return of these older concepts is that you kind of hit on it with machine readable business rules, right? Is that we tried to solve all of these problems in the past with really heavy processes that depended on human beings, like following the script. And the thing about human beings is they are like we are machines generate, like we're machines made to like solve problems and by going around the rules.
Yeah.
And so, I think the new set of tooling that's coming online, there's a lot of cool, big BI vendors doing semantic layers or independent semantic layers, semantic layer vendors like at scale. We have a semantic layer in good data. There's lots of people out there trying to tackle this problem. One of the keys is that machine readable, the ability to automate the execution of these sorts of things is in my mind what is going to allow us to do this better than we did it in 2005.
I agree. I think, and I know there's reasons why people haven't done this in the past. Is having a community that of standards that the semantic layers could be interchanged or merged together. I mean, that would be great for the data world. It may not be great for some of the vendors because everyone wants to have some proprietary stuff. But yeah, the more we can simplify that part of it, or the adoption will be more, and I think the business will just benefit by it more. You're going to get the cost will go down eventually because you'll understand where everything all is, and you'll be able to estimate the effort for changing very easy because you know where things need to be changed because you know how they're persisted. I think it'll help with competitive advantage. I think that what keeps companies at the top of the leaderboard is innovation and being able to react quickly. And I think companies, if they don't invest and don't look to see where they can optimize and look to may have an emotional attachment about how things have gone in the past, they don't want to change that. Those businesses will die. They will not they'll not be able to adapt and be able to change their ways. We're coming up to the hour, and it's been an easy conversation with plenty more we're going to talk about. So maybe for the audience, tell people how they can reach out to you, what you got planned, what you got coming up.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, follow me on LinkedIn, right? Ryan Dolley, linkedin.com/in/Ryan Dolley. I post most days about the types of topics that we've talked about here today. So you can follow me there. And then every Thursday at noon Eastern time, I do the Super Data Brothers show with my brother Eric. And so, that's kind of mostly a BI and data warehousing focused show where we talk about this sort of stuff. And then if you want to meet in person, I'm going to be at Coalesce coming up in October. So Good Data is sponsoring the DBT Coalesce conference. I'll be there. And then, of course, Data Day Texas in January. Chris and I will both be there.
Yeah, we will.
It's an excellent conference, a single day, reasonably priced, practitioner focused, very little vendor BS. I highly recommend that you attend.
There's great names there. He's built up a great following. I think I'll be doing a mean data party the night before it as well as what I did last time.
Yeah.
As well. Okay, well, fantastic having you on the show, Ryan. I always enjoy our conversations. For anyone, and also Ryan shows a bit better quality than I would have to say. He's got jingles. He has, he's got. I think he can get sponsors for it now on YouTube. He's made it, but I aspire to getting to to getting as as good as his one. But yeah, always great. When I have tuned in, it's always great content. So love the stuff you're doing, Ryan. Love the chat. But Big Data London is on in 20th and 21st of September. So you'll find. I don't know. You're not going there though, are you? But
I wish I tried, but I couldn't make it happen.
okay, well, shame. But you'll find myself and many of the other usual suspects will be there as well. And I've got a low key meetup on the 19th, the day before. So, all right. Well, thank you again, Ryan. Always a pleasure. Thank you anyone that's tuned in, especially anyone on holiday today. Well, actually, I'm on holiday today, technically, but I couldn't miss this one. Anyway, brilliant, Ryan. Take care, buddy. Thanks, everybody else. Cheers.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.